The story is about the cursed world. A world where people were marked by curses and abilities. A boy was standing with a sword in his stomach. A girl then says fast, "Remove the curse of Lord Arthur." The boy with almost no strength says he would do this. His name was Crash Valheim. Oh glory, finally a Purta, who receives the name at the very beginning of the work, right? He lacks the strongest bloodline. The black magicians. With the magical power of a spectral hand, he then removes the curse of Lord Arthur. For that was your power. He could remove curses of people who have been cursed with some spell or curse mark. But in return, he took severe damage. That made him even spit blood. The girls go towards Lord Arthur, while the Crush gets sick on his knees. But floating in the memory what had happened. Lord Arthur remembered a black. Believe in your beast. He was the one who cursed him with a power that seemed most like a fireball. But then he just finished his three girls Sagron, Bola and Mary. They came hugging him all at once. The guy was greedy. Had three. And who had nothing was Crush Arthur's little bit in ho. "Your bastard, what do you think the protest says?" Arthur said it was just ending, with what had to end. That the hope of this world was over, and all that was left was destruction. As he left, Crush said, "Have any idea how many died for you to live? Just to hang out with women?" But Sigron, the third cell, sent him to shut up. She says he should keep quiet. Because the only thing he knows how to do, it's terrible curses, just that. That's why he gets outraged and says, "You're ungrateful, you would never have gotten here without my skill." He then begins to remind them one by one, how they had saved. Starting with this redhead, the beautiful witch. He saved her from the curse of the past, but she was still ungrateful. And then it was Mary Jane's turn, upon Mary Diana, the of the Empire of Vifania. She had been cursed with the curse of arrogance. Crash had also saved. And of course she, the one with scrum blue hair, not the Valkyrie queen of the god of war. This one was the most, and evil. She constantly made friends with a Crush. And she was so unfortunate that there were even blinded the poor boy. Not to mention Arthur by that the Crush asks, "Why are you going to play so easy?" So Lord Arthur says, "This world is already doomed. So I'll start all the way from the beginning." He said this wasn't the first time they went through the destruction of the world. His abilities were regressing. Arthur questioned, "And if I could go back to the past? With current skills and knowledge?" Crush comes to the conclusion that it would be easier, prevent the destruction of the world. So Arthur said he was going to start over, went to the past with the three girlfriends, but Crush gets heartbroken, and questions, "Wait there, and as for me?" Well, Arthur's manic smile is already known. And he says, "You are no longer necessary." He said the intelligence boy's abilities, curses were even cool. But he could mess with time travel. The best thing to do was to recover his version. Oldest, younger and more resistant to curses. Arthur tells him to be unconcerned, for in the world to come it would certainly have its use. If he ever had. But it was too late for regrets. Remained a Crush, just keep begging on the floor. As the gang walked away. And the worst was that your body now charged the price for the curses he had absorbed over time. Only as we already know, if the Percha dies, the story ends, and this one is far from over, because Crush says, "I will not die." Here and there he reveals his trump card. The bastard could cast curses too. That's right guys, he could both absorb curses, and also cast. And so he looks in his arsenal for the most daughter he had. And there it is. He aims his hand at Arthur, and invokes, "Curse of the Black Mantle," the black hand coming from the depths of God knows where. Go towards Arthur. And seems to hit him full on. But only she disappeared well. Arthur sighs and approaches Crush. He reminds you of the pyres of bodies that would be made, in case the world was destroyed. And Arthur still says, "Crush my son, you don't get tired of trying." It's not just that Crush gives a smile, and says no, I can't get enough. And neither does he. Then point up. Where we see your set. The Crush just summoned no one but the Caviretto. Look at the bastard over there. And Arthur's desperate face was priceless. The Caviretto began to attack, so Crush simply told Arthur that he was alone now. And then he closed his eyes. Temporal magic involved, and when he opened them, was in front of a chandelier. I was actually in a beautiful house, a mansion, not to say a royal castle, and the Proto was now younger. Much younger, 10 years old. As everyone already knows, he reincarnated. There was a phenomenon that was the erosion of worlds. What happened was that worlds could collide. Makes. When this happened, changes in the environment occurred. Then species from other worlds invaded the Earth. Those that looked like humans were called invaders. And also those who fought against the invaders. These are called the Azure generation. But there was also a special warrior, and he was the one who could seal curses on his own body. And this guy was then betrayed by friends, being considered accursed. It was just him, our prota, who woke up 15 years younger. Scared, he got out of his bed. Seeing that you were in your fancy room. He remembers those moments before, was in the winter with Arthur, and as a final card, he had used the curse of the Black Mantle on him as revenge, and then also stole Arthur's defensive ability. So he managed to go back to the past, contrary to what many believe. This Black Mantle skill had a flaw. Every skill he stole had a kind of law. If the owner of the skill was very attached to this ability, so the difficulty of learning it increased. 10. Abilities were harder to resist than curses. The higher the conditions, higher the difficulty, only for Arthur's intelligence skill. It was very easy, then it looked like he really wanted to get rid of the skill. Thinking well, Crash remembers Arthur, often made a tired expression. Maybe for him, the emphasis on the past was actually a curse that he wanted to avoid. Actually, it was a fact that Arthur wanted to go back to the past with the three girls, because they would also their memories. So the obvious was, Arthur lost his painting ability and stayed right behind in that world. Convicted. Maybe that was even good, because he constantly left Crush to die. Being that he was always there to take away everyone's curses, who were eventually affected by it. But anyway, no more explaining. The prota was in the Hall of Blue Pines. If looking in the mirror, he saw that he was 10 years old. Again, he was part of the Valheim family, the most powerful in martial arts. For being there in that hall, he knew that the ceremony to receive his skill, a special, wouldn't happen. The Flash was one of the weakest and didn't have that talent there. So no one had chosen him in the past, so he got kicked out of the main house. He was taken to the Hall of Blue Pines, where misfortunes were taken, who had no talent. For coming back at that age and being there, he knew the ceremony had already happened, and he was rejected by the lords. Yet, he was the only one who knew about the end of the world. So, Proto wondered, I can stop this, the destruction of the world. Then he told himself not to be a coward. The question wasn't whether he could stop it. He had what to do that, because if the tragedy came, he would die together. So he walks away, thinking about the first step I would have to take. Then your personal butler comes on area. The old man looked nice like that, but appearances to see, for he was the one who had poisoned Prota when the kid was 14. And we already jumped here into a jail. What was happening? In a presentation, a girl ransacked her opponents, and while his skills were evaluated by judges, they say, oh my god, she is only 15 years old, and no can get his hands on her. This girl has holy sword skill. Her name was Charlotte Valheim, Prussia's half-sister. She was considered a talent that was born every 1,000 years, and the head of the family had a high belief in her. And who was right behind, listening to the whole conversation was Varan King Valheim, the half-brother of Crash. And what was he thinking? Simply that, I will wipe out the entire family lineage. And seeing that fighting Charlotte was too scratchy, he said, I'm going to start killing my silly little brother. Then they saw it, who summoned the butler Ario to a meeting. There he remembered the butler as the Crush had hindered his growth in the family. And so Varan who offered a proposal. Make my little brother Crush drink a sip of this, and your life, and that of your daughters will change. But Ariel told you Crush was a son to him. He couldn't do something of this nature. But you'll see who proves that even the kid would run from him. And says Aroyd, my friend, I know where your daughters live. Understood. The old man glared at no choice. And it was on any given day that the butler did what had to be done. He drank the poison instead of giving it to Crush. The day after his confirmation, the Prota had nothing to do. Just watch the man who created him die in her arms, for my brother's weakness. Teachers to support guild wait. Butler poisoned himself. Well guys, this is what happened in the past. In the other life. For now hold on to the chairs. Let's go back to the future. And their Crash is before the butler. Already knowing what would happen. He says, when you're going to use the poison my brother gave you, and the river says, it depends on what you are talking about young master. Silver says if he keeps playing down, could forget, and says that it was his own fault for such orders, a flaw. But instead of doing something drastic or dramatic, Crash says, come with me, and they go to the library. Their Crash would send him to tear down the wall. The butler draws his sword and consecrates a lot of mana, then managing to knock down the wall. The hallway was a kind of secret passageway, who guarded a giant padlock, and a hidden door in the world before Crash failed to get there before the apocalypse. Ariod then asks if he should break the chains, but the Prota says he couldn't even do it. So he invokes his black mantle skill. As Bogcat, funerals can erode what not even the sword can. And so chains are broken like paper when cut by a sharp knife. Uriel asked you to crush. If he had made the contract with any lord. Seeing it hadn't done that yet, Prash gives an excuse. Momentum recalled that the day before, Prash was kind of weird. Then he assumed the boy had acquired a good skill at that time of the murder. So, I hilted. So swear the boy that I wasn't going to tell anyone about your condition. Right with that promise, Prash sees he was really altering the past. Even though the memories of ancient life were still on your mind. So he had to play this game right. That's why he says, then we talk about your daughters. Now at this time, analyzing the secret entrance had more priority. It was actually a pink glow he saw through the door. But soon the silence converted him to a burst of energy. It was a curse that Silver saw, that under a grimoire on the shelf. That's because that was no ordinary library. Guild ancestors had worked there and passed your knowledge. All this so that it was possible to achieve mastery. Before this part of the library was accessible to all, but because of one person, this place became. And that person was Damaris Valheim, the worst misfortune in family history. But someone came after he became the strongest, and soon the grimoire was left behind, and Crush now owned it. He said, come to Daddy Beauty. Now guys, let's give some context. The worst misfortune of the Valheim, Damaris family, considered by many to be the strongest, he reached the height of his power. The strongest warriors in the world challenged him, and it's no surprise. He won them all, zeroed all enemies. As David Jones would say, I will draw them all. And if you who are watching this video are enjoying this story, go to the comments and comment. I will close all. I just want to see how many people will show up and take the opportunity to subscribe to the channel if not already register. And sit your finger on the like if you haven't already done so. Beauty fact is that no one could stop this beast. Damair's beast. He managed to use the extreme skill, blood immersion. With that he could dominate the powers of a world invader, and the book was well preserved for the joy of crashing. He could finally learn the secret techniques and become the strongest. The smartest strategy was sweat your ability to erase curses, to invent a curse that could adapt to the same principle as Damair's used in the past. With that he could divert the deadly effects of curses in your body, and it would be okay. That would make him the strongest like Iris entity. Then the protest calls Theriode and orders, from today on, no one can enter the Blue Hall. This is an order, is what Badge says. Leaving Taliud saw that crash revealed his bad intentions and so he decided to refuse Veronica's evil proposals. Poisoning the boy was no longer an option. The refusal of this order made Veronica more angry than Sari in the can, the half-brother evil. I just couldn't bear to know that in the family there were genius and a misfortune, and it was all apparently Crush's mom's fault. A Charlotte, who had several children. So Tyr's sister Lilith was also out of the highest positions. You call me Lord Veronica, said the butler, and Veronica said, go to the Blue Hall and find out what's going on. But the butler said he couldn't go in there. And the reason was because the Yeld had closed the entrance, not even Varen Pass. Who got the process with this news? While he kept biting himself in anger, Brush, who we now know as one of the heirs of the family, good thing is to be an heir, was training his skills with the help of the grimoire. At the level that was, he hadn't even reached the expert level yet. There were several levels, and the Emperor level was what was at the top of the conquest, the stage of expert, who was what he studied. A crucial position that served as a basis to distinguish Jin from ordinary people. Thing he wasn't. But his sister Charlotte was almost a master. In past life, she was successful, truth be told. So now comparing your powers, Crush wonders if he had enough to protect the world. But your past self returns to say not to regret. For even if he had no skill, but he still had the grimoire, so Perta ends his training. Gave birth from then on to the boy for mastery. But Crush wanted to know why he was there. Omotamo said that Lady Bianca had gone to the Blue Hall. Bianca the White Demon. Crush remembered her well. She was the one who became the ally of the invaders of the dimensions. At this current moment in history, she was the youngest daughter of the Hardenhart family. It was an arranged marriage. The Hardenhart family made connections with the Marshall family. As a result, both were being used by families. Because when they grew up they would have to get married. The pity is that Bianca's mother was affected by a curse. Before giving birth to their daughter, she was born prematurely, and with the curse of the cold dull, and leaving you unable to feel feelings. This kind of curse affected the soul, and couldn't be broken, or prayed bravely, so the girl was eternally cursed, and would never again be able to be accompanied by a North. That without telling your life, that was always treated coldly. Was always considered a cursed child. Prash then thought if by any chance Banka hated, and whether he hated it or not, since I had no feelings, he would erase his curse. Because it was necessary to control the fury of blood immersion. Soon he orders his butler to prepare more appropriate clothing, to be able to see her bride. And there she is, ladies and gentlemen, Bianca without feelings. Cold as snow. Now we see a flashback. Ready, because well, 5 months earlier, there was a little between them. Prush slapped the girl's hand and said, "Stop pretending, you only care about family power." That's why they would get married when they grew up. An arranged marriage, as already said, bro. Imagine marrying such a woman. The woman feels nothing. Absolutely nothing. Said that, Dane if they got married, and without showing any action, Bianca thinks she didn't even want to be there either. She was instructed by her parents to use her beauty, at least to get her family together. With a powerful, not knowing what to do, she just decided to follow the flow, even this crush loser. Turning down a little princess like her, she could say no to. But not. Finally back to the present. A beautiful afternoon tea has been prepared for them. The best smile, White remained cold. That's why he called your future bride to go for a walk in the gardens. She says, with all the animation in the world, if you understand me, they were committed. So it was good that they at least spent time together. Prush says, then how much animation? You look more like a servant. Responding, dear lord, it's not such a bad game. And what goes on in her head? Well, Bianca saw that he was very different since the last time, and that I had guessed that she liked cookies. So ask, this is really you? Prush just smiles and says, I look so different like this. By detecting that he felt he was human, Bianca bends and says, sorry, is that you are very different from when we met? Shekis couldn't remember what had happened to Bianca, because he had been reborn only a few days ago. But something he would remember perfectly was of your cold expression. The same expression she made when he lost his life in the Arctic Pavilion, and so Crush tells her true. I made a contract with God Bianca, he says, and after she congratulated him, Warperta says he had a proposal for his future wife. Bianca is direct, and says on the cam, you want to break up the marriage. Despite being well-wired, Crush says, I understand if you don't want to marry a guy like me. But despite considering, she says, I am your bride. Prush, this will never change. Prush's reaction is one of pure astonishment. Those were the words he would never expect. And the one going straight to the point this time is him. Look baby, I want your cold dull skill. Then passes it to Daddy, and the boy extends his hand, already preparing the magic of painting skills. Her question is, because he would want a curse. That could not be broken even with Makambad Breba. She imagines that he, for being considered the disgrace of the family, I was so sad I wanted to steal your emotions. So she thinks, is that what they call mental illness? He is crazy, underhanded, but that's where a magician taught her one day. About the personality change. This was a sign that the person was about to collapse. With your emotions. So she was warned to be careful with these types of people. And what she does is very distorting than she really was. She takes your hand and approaches your chest. She said she doesn't need a curse. Just needed to learn to control their emotions. And she said she would visit him more often, and until asked Dad to move near his house. Wade said, don't worry, I will not abandon someone who is on the brink of chaos, but she was getting it all wrong. Crush wasn't sad, either nothing more wanted her as a bride. Only her curse was of good size. So he starts to absorb the girl's ability. But that's where he stands. With one more barrier in the process, your mind explodes in color through difficulty. By interface, shows that there was a barrier to be unlocked. He needed to become her friend. What was easier than becoming her fiance? If he dismissed, she would just be replacing time, in which she would become the white demon. So it was better to keep her close. He would kill 2 rabbits with a punch thrown like that. Prush just says, I'm glad you'll stay like this. I can see my fiance more often. Bianca just said she would confirm with her father, and then move as fast as possible. So at the end of the day she left the pro. Then already planned to read as many books as he could, and get stronger, before she came back in a month. The next day in the Blue Hall, a lot of boxes were already being unloaded. A month at nothing. The girl took only a day to get back. So Bianca just said, from today, I'm going to live here in the Blue Hall, along with you my dear fiance. Take care of your wife. Now the prota has managed. One more mouth to feed. And that's it The prota got the dream of many out there. Money outs than woman the other day. He woke up with that cute girl snoring in her cane goat. Sleeping in the same bed, and stopped those malicious minds They are just kids so. Bianca just wakes up and says, "Good morning, crush, what are you doing there?" And he says, "I was the one who should ask that. This is my bed." But like this, crush had to go about his normal life. He didn't hesitate to keep training, and months were spent with them living together. That day he got her. She said her family gave permission very quickly. For this should be to fact that she has no bond with the family. When they started living together, they were soon approaching. When it happened it was summer. But now winter had come. The years were passing by. It meant that the Lurhane was about to open. That trained the students, especially to fight invaders from other worlds. This accepted students from 15 to 20 years old. And there were already trained several warriors with unique abilities. For Crush, who knew each other's weaknesses, since your past life was going to be a plate of handful when he entered the den. The Perta problem was that only the grimoires that took him to a certain point of your power. To speed it up, he needed to invent Bianca's skill. She was there reading her book when her fiance arrived. She said she couldn't leave him alone, his own luck, and Crush got pistol with it. Because she followed him like he was a chicken. But anyway, when he thought about asking her out, a message had arrived. Star Shrine Era. It was a sanctuary that offered an annual meeting for all young people, Star Home Kingdom nobles. Era a chance perfect for him to socialize and make new friends. It was perfect, for before reincarnating, he just stayed at home depressed. In addition, he needed to keep his promise with the old man's daughter, Butler. Brush, then send word that he will be going to the event. Bianca does the same, telling him, people at the party will criticize you. Even though Crush knows it, he would go, and his fiancée reaffirmed that she would go with him. She said, protecting my fiancé is my duty anyway. That cute no guys. Crush said he wanted to protect her. And did not speak this time, as if. But still, she was all delighted by his charismatic look. What happened was that in those 2 weeks that have passed, Crush had been extremely charismatic about her. Made even breakfast, and picked books and walked with her in the woods. She felt well treated, because no one in her family never treated her like that. I go with you, end point, not as a why, but like myself. She told him, and his thoughts. Said she no longer disliked him. Then the day of celebration came and the carriage was taking them. Passing in front of the known and beautiful dragon pavilion. Inside the carriage, Bianca took that nap while the silver looked on. They reserved a whole space to make this event. The Flash said, impressed by the wealth of party hosts. The nobles in this world were respected, for they fought the creatures in the battles of illusion, and yet they were there enjoying all night. But they looked like movie stars that the future of the nation. But anyway, they arrived at the party. Reception is not the most gallant. Look is the talentless and the cursed girl who has no feelings. People there started calling them that. They were surrounded by a bunch of snakes. That of nobles they did not even have the sole of the shoe. But that's where it appears. Valheim. Looks like someone interesting has finally appeared, said one of the group that was further back. The one with the face of a cat. These Crush recognizes he was a real nobleman. Starting with the cat guy. Balakogna. The young tiger. After the red-eyed one, Emilia Kesage, Elfin, and then the one with emo hair. Woody Archer, Anix Greaser. What a big name, Hugh. But the important thing is here. Together these three would form the Three Muskets in the future. Wapa the Triad of Stars. Crash passes looking away. Because I wasn't very fond of the chat, but then Charlotte walked through the hall wearing this dress, which is pure appeal. And still, said when I saw this dress. They keep coming to meet me. And around some bodies were passed out. It is not known why. But according to her was that no one could defeat her in combat. Crash deduced that by the mood of the people at the party. She must have made some kind of mess. Bianca just comes to him and says, don't care what people are saying. But he makes affection on his fiance's head, and tell her not to worry. What he most wanted was for the host to show up. And I just went to talk about the devil he appeared, the most carnal alchemist, dear Lord Danfarian. He was the one who flashbacks came up and Crush saw itself before rebirth, cursed and lost in the middle of the jungle. And it was there that the Perta touched him. Danfarian was him, and said, I can match you with a kind of skill. She wanted to make him her lab mouse. It is not known what its power was, but he just held the Crush. So he prepared to give that kiss. Crush then said, go out there, disgrace I haven't to men. That kid would be what in the future would become the first alchemist king, and back to the party. He started running, and being praised by those present. Crush already knew him for a long time. He gives Bianca a cake and asks her to wait for him. While the Prota approaches, Lamp you think you've seen him somewhere. And when he fell into memory he sees that Crush. He was just like his sister Charlotte. He said, do you want something from me? Or only fell in love when he looked at me? he said, even though he heard that the protagonist was snooping around, all about other worlds, invasions, or Purta. So he asks if Danfarian was interested in that. So Danfarian said, how? You attracted my attention, if it's what you wanted. So prepare for the consequences. They left there and went to a gun show. There Danfarian asked his age. Prush said he was 13, and if age meant a lot to Danf. And then he said he didn't have much time to waste. That's why he said, go straight to the point. Danfario just threw him a sword. And did not hesitate in silence, but Crash defended. You went crazy, Crash yelled at him, and Danfario said, finally met Charlotte's brother. I wasn't going to let the opportunity pass me by. He said Crash could say he would listen while they fought. Danfario said that everything they thought of them was that they were flaws. Crash hit back saying he knew, but trained hard. He knew that Danfarian was doing research to nullify the power of curses, so they kept exchanging blows, and blow goes, blow comes. The Prota said, I know you work on research to neutralize the curses that appear in this world. Danfario's strategy was to use curses to override other curses, and for that the Crush said he was going to help him with those researches. Then he again gave a Deodora, and the tongue came out of his hand. Danfario was astonished, saying, but then I thought you were out of skill. What's going on? Then soon understood that he had a skill. First was the perfect occasion to test fire against fire, and see if their curses could be lifted. But for that he had a price. Danfario said, let's date, do you want to become my boyfriend? There he guys, but Crush said, I am committed. I'm the straight one, so he said he just wanted to his help to create potions in the future, to suppress curses. Danfario said his specialty was creating potions, but that alone wasn't enough to stop the apocalypse. Wouldn't make it. Tells you that you heard that. Prit had lost all his motivation compared to your sister, but seeing his attitudes now it was different. Was talented sister the end dislocated brother? But that's when we got the card, and Daffy asked a question. You will enroll at Yahello? And Crush's response was, you bet I'll give up. It made the Tanfario all full of team likes with the news. Look at his happy face. He said he was going to even sit close to the main character, and the boy started to jump. Another thing the Proto wanted to know was about the taking off disease. Gaines said he knew this. It was one that made people with a little black skin bluish. Then Crash left him jaw dropped when he said, make me a cure. Danfarian said it was incurable. Even he didn't know how to cure it. But Crash knew what he was capable of, so she touched her fists with him and said, but you can, I know this. Danfarian got a little more confident, and said he would try. The Prota said that when he was ready, send the potion to your home, but Dan said, don't let me take it to you personally. Said all in love. Crush said, you like my sister right? And Dan said yes, was in love with her. So Crush asked again, so why do you keep talking about dating me? You are gay. And Danfario replied, yeah silly, I like men too. Cute little thing is inside that you saw. Then the Critinho ran away, saying he only liked women. Danfario just screamed, Kira they're cute, let's date one date hurt. Finally Crush arrived at the salon, and avoided a juicy kiss, but something caught your attention. A slacker was holding his fiance's arm. Crush wasted no time and gave that we love right in the face of the baggy. The guy flew over and hit the drinking table with everything. The Prota just came up to him and said, with this dark air, are you doing what with my fiancé? You're wobble, you will die. The guy got desperate. The Prota said, she is 12 years old and is my fiancé, and you will rotate. But the guy just said he was following the orders of law by Claudia. So Crete said, here there Claudia, the second princess in the High Star Kingdom. The guy said Claudia ordered Bianca to be taken until she, but the albino girl resisted. Bianca could be noble, but her curse made the others inferior. But anyway, Claudia, who was a well-off student, had summoned Bianca. He suspected something, until he remembered, Annex. Guys, this guy was a maniac, who obsessively pursues Charlotte, the Silver Sister. That even caught him, and one day, he got crazy in the head. That's why he started focusing on Silver. With a closed face, Crash recited. He said he was going there. He takes his fiance's hand, then follows what was actually going on there. Well going. They went to Atum. Crush asked why. She had refused to go see the princess. Bianca did not respond, but deep down I knew it had been the wisest decision. Crash then asked again. Bianca simply said, I didn't go because she said wait for you, so I obeyed. The Prota was then happy with this submission, and even made affection for her, saying very well. In the room in question, Balak was waiting. He is impressed by the Crash arrival. The Prota said he had gone to see Enix, and Balak said he would take it to him. Crash already knew Balak from another date, and knew he was a warrior who fought with 2 swords. Person involved better not even sit down to have a meal, but Balak is too curious to know what was taking between them. and suggests he wanted to fight the Berta. But Crush says, fights are forbidden here in this sanctuary. Put that fag out there. But he keeps pressing, and even grows his aura, where Crush sees he wasn't going to settle down that easily. But finally he decides to fight, so Bullet that comes up, they exchange sharp blows, kicking punches, claws, and good defenses. But not final Crush, hits only one that does. Bullet, that regrets having pulled that. The cat gets up saying, you really don't hold on right Crush. And the silver said, you were the one who challenged me first. But what Balak wanted was to fight, now with real guns. Crush looks at him like that, asking if the cat managed to at least stand up. And no he couldn't. Things backwards, and Bianca was impressed to the point of asking, what did you do to this poor devil? Crash said he used a special technique from the family, Valheim, the short attack, or for those intimate, half-an-inch punch. A shot at short distance that concentrated the maximum force and put anyone to suck. Only those who watched that build will remember. Hello to the bride. Crash says it's your most reliable scam. It was thanks to him that he managed to survive incountable times in the future, so they left Bullet here by Nat. Outside, Emilia and A were waiting. Emilia says he was surprised that he managed to defeat Logs. Crash stops talking and says he came in person. Ain is impressed by his steed. It was clear that Ain wanted a fight, so Crash says he would defeat him. Then the rumors about him would change. I would go from a loser to something less worse. The Crush says, what do you think? I beat you and the rumors about me change. Silver knew the two of them weren't going to attend, more the Gem, more the Azure generation, and together in the past or in the future. Ain only stayed around because Crush was useful in some way. But when he stood on the edge of the abyss, continues, Aix said that mission had been a failure. And everyone died. If he let Crash live, everyone would know the truth, and he would lose his honors. His malicious smile said it all. He just said, thanks Crash for being my friend. But Crush said, friend, you only approached me because of my sister. Can't stop thinking about her wedding. Aix said that then ended their friendship. And then left. Crush's hand slips, and he falls, but one golden hand and hair come to save him from death. Inevitable. It was Arthur. Remember that cheating blonde guy from the beginning of the story? Finally back to the present, yes. Because we were in a flashback. Crush remembers perfectly well that this was who marked the end of Anais. With the arrival of Arthur, he was expelled from the generation of Azures, and ran it. Then says Crush, hey, you even talk and look like your sister. In response Crush says, take my sister's name from the drug in her mouth. Then he attacks the Crash fist, meets a tree lock. But he dodges, and attacks from the back of the displayed inks, but another branch gets in the way and blocks the kick. And not just one, but several others light up and Crash. Playing away, but the kid at least knew how to fall in style. Crash faces the still troubled Eric. Surrounded by branches, he says, you could use a gun too. That was your skill. Wood handling. That's where Crash gets a piece of stick, and says to use the same plant Eric was using against him. Alex is not even impressed and puts the wood in the boy. There he but with an inviolable streak. Crash diverts from all attacks. Wouldn't it be today that he would take wood? Crash approaches Alex and says he was a natural enemy, and approaches it to use the stick with strength. Inks stands still, compiled by his convictions, and says, are you sure you want to keep following this path? Muluk then summons a bud of plants that explode. In the explosion, then a wooden titan is born. Fifth form of matter. Look at the size of this personal monstrosity. Even Emilia becomes desperate and says, Ex, don't be crazy, stop it. Crash stays still, and shows no fear, not even when the fist of that colossal creature comes your way. Crash just closed his eyes. If he was praying, God is who knows. But we know that one of that grimoire that was in the Blue Hall Library starts to shine. This fencing manual, it had been written by an ancestor that prevailed for 80 years, non-stop. In the words of that book, were contained sword techniques that would take a lifetime to learn. And you can bet Crash was training them. He then lifts his dick, and a massive power is concentrated at the tip, like an incidence of lightning, and had no other. The wood titan was split in half, or cut. Wild sent a bend of the creature, each way, all with the exception of Bianca, who had no feelings. Were impacted, still with white eyes. It's funny, look at the cloud of dust where Crash comes from. The prota just says like this. Never again your shit. Bank this stock on me again. Understood. It's poison, only poison without strength in the legs. After this, Ash wanted to scream his ability earlier. After using so much power, he could barely move. Bianca comes up behind and gives that cute hug saying, let me help you, my fiance. And she squeezes so hard that even there is lack in it. At that same time, Danfarian, cutting on both sides, appears and says, hey girl, don't get so heavy with him. He passes here, and he goes to the lounge. Everyone comment on what that would be. Then Feria saw that rumors were spreading. When the crush woke up, would be a little more famous. But Will was more concerned with the expression that on the face of Ang's. He leaves the castle tonight. It was over for them. Finally a week has passed and the crush retrained his skills. He had recovered from damage he suffered from using a lot of magic, and passed all the way back home unconscious. But now he had enough time to plan theft of the Angst skill. He could soon wear the black mantle all on his face, or else make us doubt our own ability, generating emotional instability. But when he gave that massive attack on the giant, it was at that moment when Angst began to doubt his abilities. What was a good sign? Therefore, it would take a while, but he could show off his opponent's skill. For that he would have to train every day, a year before entering the to surpass all. Genius there. Crush returned to the Blue Hall, and Ariota informed him that his brother had arrived. Omodomo also said that the kid had refused twice brother's messages, so Crush said he could come in. We'll remember that it was this brother who wanted to kill his little girl just to remember. Bianca gives you some water. What's the problem? Crush questioned, and Bianca said he smelled like sweat, and even liked the smell of man right. But still, Silver wonders if maybe it wasn't better. Take that shower, but see you don't, and Bianca tells him not to get too close to his brother, since Veronkin was full of freshness. He recall. Then she goes out to leave them alone. Baby in the past. Oh Crush sees that people could look at him with strangeness, and Arthur's ghost even torment him. Although he was once a hero. Crush wonder what he was doing in this new world. Better not even know. But Veron who arrives, himself who tried to kill his own brother. SP. He arrives already criticizing the fact that Crush be more relaxed, but the protest says even heroes need a break. Sometimes Veron who says, so the rumor that you defeated the Anks is true, but Crash deflected the subject by saying, I heard that they will start the exams soon. Soon you are prepared little brother Veron. Who gives him inspiration as if he had been mocked. His family was one of the strongest. Soon he was strong too, and that's why he said, I don't need to study to pass the exam. Don't be so just because you defeated a guy. And Crush says, Anaheim you are, and you'll see who gave that pig a tap. He said he had gone there to give an order. They were going to the Jiliak Mountains. There was an erosion event there. Could be something crazy. Could, and that's why Crush was. Because this type of mission, he wasn't supposed to do until he turned 15. But Summer, who said, is concerned about, oh little brother, I will protect you to the end. Something will happen. Something tragic. More Crush. Did you know that trust this rascal? It was the same as releasing the pitbull and ask him not to bite. Bad idea. But the prota just said, spoke if it was a trap, and it was. He would find out. Then, his fiancée came and asked where he was going. He told, and asked her not to follow. She said she wouldn't, and the expression Veronkin made was one of disgust. The girl with the curse of coldness. He said with repudiation, and Crush reply, is my fiancé, son of a citizen, and he Veronkin exchanged barb. The brother left. And then Crush complimented her with cute little caresses. And she said, just won't pass out again, okay? And he left, saying, Crush will return in Avengers. Dr. Destiny, you must be wondering, what is this erosion event? Well, erosion, it is a phenomenon of when one world is invaded by another. In this case, on the ground. When it happens, creatures emerge and even the environment changes. And if the illusion spreads like cancer, that whole area ends up becoming another world practically, and that's what the Garilak Mountains had become. A tremendous swamp was at alert level 3. Baran who says the team determined, I was going to make forays into this place. Once the core boss was defeated. Was a task for the women's team. See who was calm. Despite being only an expert level. He said, Crush brought you here, for you to acquire field experience, and pretending life is beautiful, the prota just says, alright, but deep down the reason he went there. This control of your frenzy ability. Not long passed and the creatures were already being sliced. 2 mountains were surrounded by several giant insects. One of them says, look there, and when we see it is Crash that has just arrived. One of the hunters is impressed, asking if the prota had ever fought an eruption. Before the Flash says it is only 13 years old, and not even come close to it. So see who said, how can a family disgrace? That even you don't get that calm. Nothing there was compared to your first experience number. When for real, when he was 15. Where he was slaughtered by the creatures there. But now it was completely different than he was now. So Crush just says, don't compare me to you. This lets Veron in process, who already wants this sword face, so the jealous brother thought about the possibility of Crush growing so much that could overcome him. Then they saw what would be the family's disgrace. Crash then tried to make him wake up of this delirium, and said they were close to the creature, saw that he said it would be easy, because there were no monsters there to disturb. Crash then said that was the reason for them to be twice as alert. It scared the other hunters, but Summer, who said nobody lost his mind, because of it. It was just rest assured it was a level 3 illusion, soft when they part. Crash will go its own way. He could do it right there, clearly see the natural energy of illusion. That was a full plate for him. Just remove your mask and start inhaling the mist. But it was a brutal mistake, for he immediately spits a spurt of blood. The other hunters will support him when they see who takes the wave. Him risking doing that, for the mist was a deadly toxin. So to do it properly, he had to use some recovery skill. And that's what he then made. How he learned in the grimoire. He just lets your natural magic mix. That of the environment around you represents a mixture that manifests itself in several different colors. This is proof that he had achieved the balance. He almost faltered, but still continued to observe. But truth be told, a person with a weak mind would never have been able to. The pain is too big, and to improve there was still one more secret technique. This one was left by a wise ancestor, and that was an aura sensitivity skill, or sixth sense. With her overpowered could feel the whole physiognomy and energy they were surrounding. The place where he was no longer covered by natural energy. It meant that he had overcome and absorbed everything. It was enough for him now to absorb it from the other areas, but not in the end would still need to absorb his fiance's skill. But when he was finally getting somewhere, a sticky, disgusting presence scared him. When the Crush looked back, a giant worm was staring at him, and on the head of this worm there was a face. Say what you want, but this is not God, no. The face just opened the blind eyes. And then it turned into a mutation that can't even tell what it is. The mutation keeps happening, and this weird thing you guys are seeing emerged and then roared. Summer that in nursery they wore, only if you heard the voice prepare for battle and what God called it us. The warriors wielded their blades. Then, their powers began to dissolve, and its hungry auras burned. From there, Crash saw that Viren, that was stronger than he imagined, was the skill known as Ignis. She burned everything she touched and reduced the ashes. It was the same skill as Viren had used it to burn his brother's arm in the afterlife. Crash never forgot that. The bizarre creature was casting curses on the warriors. It was a curse that erased the faces of those affected. Continues. Even the gentlemen were fighting, but the monster's power was overwhelming. The best strategy for one of them was to back off, but that wasn't in Viren King's plans. With his sword of fire, it appears, cutting the creature and expanding its attack into a fire. He feeds the conviction of his companions by saying, "Oh, don't back down. I will create an opening." That was enough to stoke everyone's will, and making them not shy away. His look back was suggestive, because he wanted Crush to see it all. The boy then pays attention to the. There we see that the thousand-faced monster was crying. Blood cloud. All demonic faces were pouring blood calcium. That wasn't a good sign. Even the air pressure suddenly changed, causing strangeness in Viren. So the monster's death was more than a priority. Staff all attacked together. Viren ordered them to attack together. The aura of his attacks wasn't working as it should, so they needed to hurry. Otherwise the ugly bug would get worse and worse, and even their screams now didn't have that much effect. The cadets were, but without how to answer the captain's call, for they no longer had a face. And when you catch it in your face, Summer that now understands the reason for your misfortune. Half of your face is gone. The thousand-faced monster roar in front of you, and the cold rain that falls extinguishes the flames of his courage. Your aura of fire fades like an extinct bonfire. But with the least amount of courage left, Vronkin advances. Who knows, Lux still held his hand, and in the monster's hand was his curse. And now Vronkin fled. As he advanced, only what you put in your thoughts were accusations of how pathetic he was for having surpassed his 3-year-old sister. It was pathetic before. Imagines now that he was running away and left your comrades to die. No honor above him. The beast accompanied, but I think by instinct, he drew his sword from fire again. What he can do is block. And don't look yet, but Crash was running. And looking better, we see that he saved his evil and envious brother, who now had only one eye to cut it. The smile Crush gives when see that Viren King is fine, priceless. He Viren King to a safe position. And from there, they watch the stick break in the clearing below. Viren who said he could walk by now. But Crush tells him to stop being a donkey, because in this condition he can't even use his aura. And said, "Are you sure you don't need my help, Lord Almighty?" Viren who said no. What a surprise born. But looking at the red sprats in the sky, they should be close to the erosion field. Which also means that to get out of there, the thousand-faced demon needed to fall. Viren that when he hears this he says damn. Crash then said he had a letter up his sleeve, who could use. Secret technique he learned, specifically with your sister, Lady Charlotte. Not without reason. It makes Viren how curious. Charlotte had feelings for him, because they were born of the same mother. Viren who then asks, this technique can defeat the monster, and Crush reaffirms and says, if it doesn't at least I want to have tried. Then extend your hand to the brother, not that he deserved, for Onkin had to admit even though he didn't like his sister, that she was too strong. And said, hope this works, because otherwise it's a coffin and a black candle. Prash just said, don't worry, I won't be a disgrace. After putting together the strategy, they went to wait for the right time to attack. Prash asked his brother if he was ready. Yes, with its aura of fire. Then Silver said, let's start. So he started to accumulate power with his summer sword, and contemplated how pure and bright the Crash aura was. Never seen anything like this. Prash then asked him to use his aura Ignisferen, who activated and combined his powers with that Crash, where the Proto was taken over by the flames. They saw that, became concerned and said it was done correctly. The Proto said yes. It were. His flames shone even brighter than Varen himself, who was impressed. Exhaling enough power, Prash then went into battle. And let's say it didn't take long to leave the creature in the middle with a blow from his sword. Simply one blow and the monster was incinerated. Prash turned around and said, soon but I wasn't going to accept the fact that he was weaker than his brother, youngest, who was considered the disgrace of the family. That's why he attacked the Crush. Then, just in time, the Proto blocked the attack. It was the second time they saw, who tried to kill his own brother. But this time Crush wouldn't let it go now. Or Proto managed to unlock all the barriers that made. They saw that he did not give up his skill. So he attacked. He struck a blow with only his fatal claw. It was fast until they got along once in their lives. But his brother was always hostile towards him, demonstrating no appreciation or caring about the brash. Then just put a little piece of monster in your mouth, and waited for him to bite for shortness of breath. And that was the brother's condition. In the beautiful main palace of Valheim, was having a funeral for those who fell. They especially saw. Everyone was dismayed, thinking they saw he had sacrificed himself for his brother. The Viran butler who claimed this standing by, and Crash passed behind. They had no idea what had happened. The Flash knew they believed the witness. That was him, so that wouldn't be a problem. The mission had been more profitable than he could have imagined. Got more powers, and control of the black flame. Was good size. There was just one more problem to solve. He approaches a door and enters. There was Sapphire, a fourth-class researcher. In her neck, Prash sees a black star. He knew she was an undercover from the other world. That's why he already plays straight to her without winding. I will steal your immortality for you. And the woman, without disguising more, reveals his face. In the past, Prash had already tried to steal the immortality of one of these beings. Immortal. This chained redhead you guys are seeing was an immortal. It was Arthur who had ordered his capture. But things hadn't ended very well, because Crush wasn't able to erase his immortality. The condition he needed to unlock before erasing this immortality was totally insane, and the condition was just being stronger, and surpassed the immortal in everything. Or present, Sapphire, that was one of these beings, immortals who were infiltrated by human beings. Was before the Prota. She said, I was looking for someone like you, and the Prota says, what makes you think I'm one of those returnees? And she answered, a child, that even you don't come up with a chat like that, gave up my immortality. What do you expect me to think? Her aura then grows absurdly little by little, revealing its true form. Prash doesn't make it cheap either. After all, he wanted his power. The power of the Black Mantle involved Sapphire, and she was a reborn too, just like he was. She did this in an attempt to find a person, strong and dignified, or enough to take his life, and the protector would be this person. So she asks, what your condition? Prash said, help me get stronger. He couldn't erase his curse yet, for he had not unlocked the spiritual barriers. Internal for this, Sapphire doesn't think it's a bad idea. After all she wanted was to be freed from this immortality. Easy Crush could erase her immortality, and make her immortal. Then she said, pleasure. I am the Crimson Autumn Garden, and I will make you the strongest man alive. Only her aura was overwhelming. In the past she was Arthur's rival, and had led legions against him. So he had to get stronger, because Arthur was around too. And if the world ended this time, had no return. So the Prota extends his hand saying, thank you for being with me. Prince Sapphire just smiles and says, call me Master Pirulho. Moments later they head to the hall. Sapphire thought he lived there, but Crush says he hasn't stepped there in years. Another hooded blonde used to find them. She passes him the account that her mother wanted to see him, a surprise for Crush, that I had barely seen her all these years. But at more, the hooded one says I'm not his mother. But how also the father wanted to see him, and who was his father? Well, a man who was on the semi-divine level. It was more likely that he had felt something through the stars upon the sun. But Crush wasn't going to do that. He said he was going to come home, and would only come back when your father requested the presents again. Or if he was to see you in person. So they got into the carriage and left. On the way, Crush thinks you were free of that boring and melancholy mansion. But Sapphire, yes, that red crow, talking to him. A Sapphire, she asks him to open the door. but he complains about the shade of red and was too flashy. But that was the least of the problems, as Sapphire could change color too, and changes its color to black. Back to the blue hall, Prosh says there's a white girl living here. Be nice to her. And she showed up to get the new one back, dressed in a cute hoodie. The butler Mario was also there with a very worried air. He brought a letter, of Master Danfarian. A paper said he had completed the potion that Crush had asked, and even filled the letter with kisses. Crash just delivers the letter and tells the butler to treat Danfarian with great nobility when he arrived. Only there was one more thing. Butler said, Lady Bianca has been very pleased with you in your absence. When she learned that Crash had been caught on the swamp mission, she was slightly pregnant. Crash can't believe she demonstrated feeling. So he used his power to check if the locks in her heart had unlocked. Sims, for the first time, was unlocked. He couldn't stop looking at her like a mouthful, so the girl asked, there's something wrong with my face, and Crush said, don't relax, is that I wanted to introduce someone new to you to Sapphire. The crow flies in Bianca's hands. She then squeezes the bird tight, saying it was very light, but Crush's attentions was on how he unlocked the second lock of Bianca's heart. The lock of love. The condition was to become the most important person of her life, but the big question was, how do you do it? It could mean a lot of things. Could be a relative, or even the relationship, and since he was her fiance, a relationship made more sense, but the girl couldn't even feel emotions. How to win the heart of such a person? Sapphire tells Crush that Bianca liked him. I could see that. He somehow piqued her interest. But anyway, the reason he was there wasn't that. So Sapphire said, enough child talk, time for heavy training, and that's what they did. After a round of training, Crush was all broken, lying on the floor without air. Sapphire said, is all a reincarnated one can do. I am disappointed. The truth is, Crash was just different. Because reincarnated with the abilities of his past life, but a really talented person could overcome him without the slightest effort. But it was different for Sapphire. She said it could be true if they had talked exclusively about talent. But when it came to training with her, talent meant nothing. She said, you have an incredible ability. Crash can the power of whoever you want. Sapphire said that personally would make him ascend. If it depended on her, his destiny would be the heights above all and all. What did she want more than that? Was to finally end his immortality. A few days then passed. Danfario was there jumping and extorted. He approaches Crash saying, my sweetie, bade you weighing. And the proto responds, when exactly did I become your sweetie? Then asked what he had ordered. Danfarian then shows the pill that had fermented. So not a genius, he said. Crush said he would never have doubted that. So delighted with praise. Danfarian gives the grab to the proto saying, oh what a good smell. Crush responds, here's, I'm still straight. But anyway, Danfario brings news from Enx. He said, after you lost a battle in the sanctuary for the prota, he returned to strong training. He was still going to keep giving Crush a headache. But the daughter came up and said if he wanted to wear a pill, it might even work. It would strengthen your body to the fullest. So she hinted he could ask Danfario to make another potion, and this time a rare elixir that could elevate your strength and aura abilities. That only a few people and families had access to, but Crush didn't know where to get that. Sapphire told him to stay calm, that she was going to tell the recipe for Danfario to make, then call Danfario and say, I need you to make a recipe for me, saying that Danfarian did not think of refusing, so Sapphire told him the ingredients. And then he explained everything to his apixenic. The blonde was even stunned by so much information. Danfarian then said, look, I can do this, but the problem is where I would get these ingredients. Were two legendary items, white sumguard mushroom and golden dragon grass. It was almost impossible to find it. First, the mushroom only grew on family territory, Hunter Hertz, that was full of monsters and creatures. For this, Crash said he was going to ask his fiancée for help, since she was from the Hunter Hertz family. And the other ingredient was gold grass, that only the next ring of dragons grew in the depths of the empire, and if the soldiers caught him snooping where he shouldn't, the snake would smoke. Crash says if nothing works out, he was going to talk to some salesman, would not say. So there's another way for that. He explains that the Athenian Empire offered an annual tournament to anyone under 15 years old who won would take draconic golden grass as a prize, but since Crush was in a political game, he feared getting a lot of attention. But Danfarian sent that little kiss and said, leave me love, hold this here. Then throws a Besicality reliquary at the prota. Crash safe and says, I've never seen anything gayer in my entire life. What is this for? Well served, very well, for the main character has turned into a woman, was a transmorphosis artifact. Crash screamed in amazement, my god, what the hell is this? The plan was as follows: disguise yourself, even if it was a woman. Dan Fario just him, saying he had a beautiful aura that he could be part of. But the Proto wasn't going to do that. He broke the artifact and passed the idea. And disguise yourself as a woman, not even to prevent death. A few days later, and crash training was intense. In front of Sapphire, your concentration was maximum, as if he had concentrated some power. And soon the crow fertilized powers on its wings. Then held them against the Protat. Crash blocked them with his blade, but it wasn't enough, for it flew away. With the force of the blow, Sapphire said enough for today. She said the technique she was teaching him. It was a technique which could read the enemy's movements, but needed a lot of concentration. She further says that with 6th grade skills, sense and natural he had, Crash could even reach premonition. And it all depended on the elixir's action that would boost your mind. A few days before, Crash was on the way out. He had a corpse on his hands. It was the potion that Defario had promised I would hide him with a good disguise. Unlike before, he promised Crush wouldn't become a girl. Not quite. Crash was already edge. The potion had the effect of 1 day, so he would have to do what he could. At that time, he made his way to the carriage, where your friends were waiting. Ariel said he had managed a little help to cross the lawless border. A saleswoman who would take them in her carriage. The Proto thanked the butler. Ariel said he wouldn't let that no one went beyond the limits, and Crush had everything in control, for he had forgiven Riot and saved his daughters from his brother's clutches. Bad with that, he told me to serve to pay this favor. Must be a small price, if compared to your daughter's lives. And Crush finally forgot the betrayal. Your fiancé hasn't forgotten either, and brought him a basket full of provisions. She said, I go in search of the mushroom, and you give darkened grasses. I will help you until the end. Crash said he would be back as soon as he could. And when it opened on Friday, it was full of sandwiches. They wished good travels and left. When they took a break, Crash took the opportunity to train ear flame manipulation skills. Sapphire asked how the control was going, and Crush said it was going well. The merchant who was carrying them and her, they'd gone through safe paths to avoid erosion zones and monsters. But it wasn't just in the zone from Jerusalem that there were monsters, for highwaymen came out of nowhere and surrounded the merchantman. They said, how the boss will love this hottie here. And they've already been reaching into the poor thing too. They lost their minds completely. Fully speaking, for the sword blow beheaded the bandits. In the event blood gushed from their bodies. Crash proved dark and merciless. One of the robbers who survived went crazy saying, what did you make your kid? And sent the others to attack him. The robber screamed, your kid, you have no weapons. But Crash pulled out his blade and responded, weapons like this sword here. I'll show you what I do with Tramp then. The Proto applied a sequence of slashing attacks that torn even the souls of the bandits, mercilessly, and only one thug left with an axe. He attacked with ferocity, but Crash blocked. And after 5 more well-defended shots, the Marauder saw that Crash was predicting his attacks. He said, these tricks won't work against me, blah blah, and said he was going to use his special technique, and blah blah blah. Crash was just waiting. When he came with his axe from the blade, the ghost blade, and so the Proto squinted, and didn't spare the time to activate his aura of fire. Crash looked at him straight and said, I know this secret technique. You aura of the killer dog Beckman. The killer dog was a serial killer who became an ally of world invasions, next to Bianca, when she got sick. He was who in the future would infiltrate the group of big stars to make a massacre, and would just be stopped by Charlotte, and that would make her one of the most famous people in the whole empire. But that wasn't supposed to happen now. That's why the Crush is intrigued why his infiltrators were already wandering around the areas. Thinking about it, he tackled fire on the axe guy and ended this fight right away. I had a bad feeling about it, he said, so he got his niece to leave soon in some time. They arrived in the capital of the Silent Empire. On a balcony, 2 girls were watching the crowd. The little girl was Sidleafania, the 4th province of Athens Empire. She was impressed, as this year had many interesting roles. Your wax company lady said she shouldn't even be there. If your dad saw that, he would go crazy again. This 14-year-old girl, age was a real genius. At 7, she already solved advanced math problems. She read and reread the entire history of the empire. She feared that if someone so bothered, when she was a candidate for the throne of the empire, she would be the target of murderers. So she decided to make everyone behind her. She then started acting like a girl and problematic. Then those who had considered her to the throne stole this idea. When seeing this, your lady in waiting will be. I knew the little girl acted like that to avoid being killed. The little girl then said it will be. Look there. Crush passed hooded and with a crow, looking like everyone's father. In the crowd, he sure looked like a villain. Shidley said, and if he is from the Valheim Empire, our criminal enemies. But it will be, said I doubt the Valheim family would have the courage to show the faces around here, but Triley had a suspicion and hot blood. And so, she said she would have this proof in person. He just told her to be careful and disappeared in the crowd. Sizzle knew well what he was expecting from a member of Valheim, so he distrusted the calm and attitude of the boy. Krish moving forward. I knew the police knew him. He had already finished entering the tournament, and was looking for an insulation, but all were already crowded. And when he thought he was going to sleep out tonight, a friendly lordship arose, offering him a place to stay. The boy accepted without evening. That the Sapphire Crow thought it was pretty suspicious, she said to Crush. Never taught him not to trust strangers, but the prostitutes followed the old lady, saying he was tired of sleeping outside. And this was the Vale hut, far away from her city, in the middle of the woods, giving one of Joe and Marriott. He entered the Vale hut, and he told him to go get his room at will. And up there he got a little surprise. Cinder was waiting for you with that smile saying, "You the guy from earlier, right?" Ordinary, Sapphire said when seeing this. "I told you it was a trap." Your mouth. But he decided to just ignore her and move on. But the princess gives no respite and comes along saying, "How strange, he's already ignoring me." But the protest says, "Not cute. You don't do my type. There is a woman more beautiful than you." And the bubble says, "Seriously, who?" And she continues following him, wanting attention, until Crush tells her to stop following him. It was weird. All it took was a gay guy wanting a cone from him. But Sidley says, "Wait, let's at least eat together." And the protest says, "I don't want any trouble, girl value." But after this one, Silver stood still and thought about life. When the swan said, "So even knowing I'm a princess, you will be acting like this, Lord Crowbearer." She actually knew who he was, and he could hardly believe. Crush continued to do nothing, saying he had no idea what Suda was talking about, calling her a child. But the appearance wasn't much with his attitude. Sura arrived then and asked if Crush was really who she said he was. Suda explained that those in the big star grew, and her empire spoke the same language, just with a little difference in accent. Guy praised her wit. Sidley said it was kind of weird. It looked like he knew her from some corner. Wax suggested leaving for aggression, capture him, and torture. Sidley said it wasn't necessary. But first she wanted to know about her sister. It was the Sagran Cloud. That was different than it was. 1 year she had changed for some reason. So much Sizzle didn't know her anymore. It had to do with a bad feeling she felt. Sizzle feared. I had a feeling something bad was going to happen. But anyway, let's go to the tournament where our Proto was busting and fell. He sent his opponent into space. With a miraculous blow, other competitors watched with these scared faces. Thought he was some kind of underworld walker. To walk with that crow on his shoulder, and even more, Crest had to deal with the Sizzle that was lurking in the shadows. He was in control of everything, still having passed in the preliminaries. It was going to be a crazy battle of 100 guys, and only the best 4 would advance to the finals. Would he followed by Tommy? The masked one was staring at him. It was more for a person who has gone through bizarre experiments. This weirdo accused the Protat of being a malice of the Night Slayers. Was an underworld faction. Dangerous people. They undermined the great empire to collapse. One day the Proto just said he was wrong. He tried to leave, but the weirdo told him to be fine, until they are friends. And said, "I know who is supporting you. My plate." Then left, leaving the Crush with the flea behind the ear. Sapphire was dulled with that and said he was going to find out the story. She saved him and walked towards the weird guy. It wasn't enough for the weirdo to look at the crow, and it didn't last long either for him to be sharpened by the powers. Sapphire said he brainwashed the guy. Light thing with the demented guy. Brush asked, "Hey my comrade, answer me what is happening," or Case said the night crows were nearly annihilated. Recently, they had been brought to the frontier of the kingdom, by order of your new master. And this new faction master, was none other than the second prince of Aphania Empire. This was a discovery for Crash, because originally the malice of crows of the night was established by the empire itself, to observe the nobles, tracking and observing each of your actions. So like the royal family itself, was the progenitor of this faction. A new master didn't make any sense. Just because this information was leaked like that silly, Rash knew someone should have done it on purpose, as this faction was extremely careful and hidden. The truth was that the second prince had to strengthen malice of the first prince. If he died first, the power of the first prince collapsed, so Sigrun was the one at the center of it all. One of the 3 girls who abused him in the past, next to Arthur and Crush, inherited these memories. The truth was most revealing and also tragic, for her target would be none other than, most likely to ascend to the throne of the empire, as always Sidley. That would make the way to Arthur take the throne, was facilitated. Soon the little princess had to die. What if the Sigrun took control of the empire? Everything would fall. A massive outbreak would be triggered in the world. So the only way to stop this was pretty obvious. Stop yourself Grun and still break your skill. For that he asks for Sapphire help. She says he didn't tell himself blindly, with a vision of the future only. But still she would help you. Oh, and don't forget the zombie that was in front of you. The poor guy was brainwashed, but still crushed said to leave him there. I was going to be his personal servant. He sends the guy away, and he obeys. And the next step was, it's time to use our disguise. The prota says, Crush used the artifice to wear your disguise and infiltrate the faction. This faction was full of friendly people. Like this crazy guy here, he barely had teeth in his mouth. So the tournament continues. In the preliminaries, Crash over the guise of Crid, the crow-bearer gave the opponent a lion. Then, the announcer's voice announced her triumph. For the entire stadium did Ibar, in applause and ovation. They invented Cred. I think the Raven Bear just made a joy. In thanks. Up there in the Pavinar, assisted Sizzle. She came to watch, even after all his fun. But the fact is that the preliminaries ended that day. Sizzle went against him. To take some information, he praised, and said he wasn't just any child. But Crush broke the mood, and when he said, "Who are you, princess?" Must have a very difficult. It made her sad and intrigued. But Crush continued, watched his back and left saying he was going to sleep. Cinder was very intrigued by that, but only the main wanted to prevent her from being murdered, and the pity was that she barely knew it. When the owner of the wax company arrived, Cecily asked if they really could trust the spies of the Empire. Wax said she would redouble. The little princess watched Crash come out just below. In the sand tunnels, a militiaman of the Ravens of the Night was in ambush, just waiting for the prota to show up. Crash found it quite familiar. He said, but have already appeared. The bandit just punched his daggers, and didn't even want to know about the introduction. Left soon for the murder. Crush didn't shake, just held firm to the attack, but from the bandit's arms, two sinister bones emerged. Just it wasn't that funny, as the crow-bearer kicked, who shattered his legs into pieces, then gave that headbutt that broke his nose. Crash said, black magic won't work for me. Ivalesk, and Avalesk replying, how do you know my name, Lollipop? Crash just wondered where the scrim was. When Ivalesk said he had no idea what he was talking about, the protest said, let's do like this. I will use my magic, and find your heart. Then you tell me everything, for good or for evil. In personal truth was a woman who was behind this. Birdo you are seeing there, he was a poison, and a necromancer. This one with unveiled glasses that well-poke he control. In the past she was imprisoned by the Empire, had your heart stolen. Crush even served her well. Knowing she was the only necromancer in that world, it made sense, because what was going on over there? Soon Crush took her in for questioning. She was kind of scared that the main character felt sorry for her, because she had her heart stolen. He landed on his jaw and said, look at me, and she said, you told me you would get my heart back. Crush confirmed this, then started to use his ability to gather powers. When he walked into her, I say inside her soul, he saw several dead bodies because the poor thing had no heart left. So he saw that he would have to go other ways, and spoke, Ivalesk, you give yourself my permission. I would like to bet from your heart. I can retrieve it here now. Frying, Ivalesk said he gave permission, yes, for him to break these chains they learned. As long as he could bring his heart back. But Crash said she had to put her whole soul into it. So help by saying, imagine this, when you have your heart back, you will be able to relax at will in this room. You will be able to eat at will, and play at will. Otherwise it would have to serve forever. The royal family would have to work forever. But Velesk was just like your Dawn. Bad no is to have a job. The bad thing is having to work. Exalted like this. She let her power grow a little and Crush felt their dimension in your aura. She only asked for one thing in return. Save me, Crowbearer. She said she would give her heart if I set her free, but Crush said that wasn't enough. She had to offer her heart to him, in exchange for your deepest desire. And she said, desperate who just wanted to live an easy life. Unconcerned, without being anyone's slave anymore. And with that, Crush saw that it was willing more than enough for her to release the keys to her soul. He just said, very well, Evlet. You are finally free. Then she said, fast, give back my heart. The silver sad, wanted to do this as soon as it was all over. He also wanted some information and asks what Sigrun was up to. Evlet Pen revealed something. She had been ordered to kill Vetera Wax, the little princess's lady-in-waiting, and then use your poison to kill the terrible Sisla. But it was Sigrun herself who decided to take action. She spared no effort and sent Meridana, the master of spears, takes care of the message herself. Cruelly she impaled the poor girl of Wax with her spear. She said, you will be proud to die for the Empire. The blade, furious screw Wax, ended up falling before the merciless Diana and her spear, and died. She then passed the order to Evelus and then looked at the moon. It had been a year since he had kidnapped. Saying she and her Grun did that for Arthur. Now going for a quick flashback. We go back to before the end of the world. The first Saturday before their prediction of the future. It was 1 in the afternoon. They had just done libidinous acts. Arthur wears his clothes after obscenities, telling the place where they should be. In front of the Statue of Peace. They went there, but Arthur supposedly gave them a K. Neither Arthur nor the redhead had gone. Back to the present. Donna walked the streets remembering these things. She reaffirmed to you that you should be strong, and trust him in Scrun's plans. Donna then asked his assistant, that it was a vetch. If the guy with a crow in the competition was her job, and yes he confirmed her achism. Diana told the girl, never think of doing something silly when insurance was out, for she was in control of her heart, and Everest said yes. Controlling the universe telepathically or with witchcraft. Whatever, she was a necromancer, and when Brutes turned his back. Diana questioned the fact, him always wear ugly and grotesque scars, and said, what a pity that you are saving for you a delicate body. Like this boy. Too bad he's just the boy. Said she with that lick on her lips is. Boyish, that's right what they're thinking. Finally the day of the finals arrived in Crash, and would have to face an opponent, a few years older than he got worse. But I wasn't the one who got crazy. This guy's name really is Pyre. Was the son of farmers, and only wanted peace in the world. Was one of the most skilled warriors of the Azure generation, and they draw their swords. I turned question, pro-bearer. You like murders. Is not, and prepare for the fight. But before, Crash gave him one last warning. If you cling too tightly to hope, will never resist despair. But the guy was the Huthhead, and used his 10-step shadow technique. He moved behind that, Prota for a fatal elimination, but didn't count on the skills, Prota premonitories, who defended with a sword. He didn't even move, and it put Perry more on the alert. His attacks were only merely show, a magic show for Crash techniques. Barry looked like he saw a ghost. He had grown up in snowy lands, where his every step was light, and he mastered this lightness, dominated every trend, and Crush had watched well. He approached the opponent, and with unrivaled skill, yielded him with a blade around his neck. And in fact, Worsay ended up freaking out. You might admit that joke was good. But anyway, the proto was nice, so did not submit your opponent. Gave only one punch in your belly so strong, that after this, who freaked out was Kabanka, and the victory of the Raven Bearer, the judge announced, and the crowd went to the hearing. Pirates, Ocus where else sta? What matters is that line on the floor. Worsay spoke even more. He said, will it be that one day we will meet again? Could Crash said yes. For in his other life he has seen one found. Crash had already helped, removed a curse from him. With this he had promised to train hard every day, to stay strong and protect the world. The Crash face was almost of pure emotion. Because it was the first time that a person I had really thanked him. And so, before leaving him standing in the arena the Perta said, see you at the game, the Helms, Thovener's partner. The second prince just watched the Evolusk side. He was satisfied with the performance. From the Raven Bearer, this fat guy's name was Chifanafini. He said he would use the Crash to conquer the nobles and raise to the throne. Of course, by your side. Evolusk says it was an honor to serve. And he said, good to know. I who have your heart on my hands. So obey me like a puppy. While he kept treating Evolusk. That no puppy. Several people approached them. Nobody knows where they came from, but they were this of the Black Dragon. These guys only showed up when the subject was execution, so guess. Diana was among them. She just announces, Ephania Chifun. You are being arrested for attempted murder of the fourth character. Sizzle of Ephany. The fat guy went to the police saying, what is this? Because I would kill that pathetic girl. Diana said that in the hiding place of the faction of the Night Crows, they found a murder order. But Chifun went crazy, screaming that I had never written such an order, and he then ordered, Raphael, execute these traitors, trying to drive me crazy like you did, and the poor necromancer didn't even know what to do. Only a voice was heard by them. Who died, and Donna knew that voice perfectly. Herself, the same wax we saw killed by Donna's spear. Now I came next to your Protgia, a little princess, as if nothing had happened. And Donna's face was almost Derhia. Deep down she knew she had killed Wax. What was happening? On the night that Wax was murdered, supposedly, she ran through the city streets. She remembered Sadili's advice, not to trust the Empire's new spies. They had betrayed the palace. So, she was feeling something was about to happen. So she ran back to Australia, as fast as you can. But halfway through, she stumbled upon the Sapphire Crow. Sapphira already knew what was going to happen. Then said Syrah, don't worry, I will share my immortality with you. Just pretend, if dead she was. And with the bird talking directly to her. Then your eyes received the mark of immortality. That was just in time, from when Diana appeared behind her, ready to murder. It was just her time to rationalize her emotions, and already got that impaled in the belly. And well, that's what happened. Back to the present. Sedley then ordered the immediate arrest of the deputy, commander of the Black Knights, by serious espionage, so he wasted no time and carried out his orders. She ran and shot them mercilessly with a sword stroke. The blow was so violent that it shattered his armor, and he flew away. Donna wondered then what is happening. Nothing had left her, and second, there was a plan. The smart girl had predicted all this. That's what happened. Don't forget that she has the gift of premonition. Diana then puts her hand inside a bag, and inside we see a heart. Yes guys, for those who had not understood before, this is the heart of Veles. They probably had her heart. And using Anna magic, orders her to obey his orders. But she was in a mortal paradise, because there were also suggestions for Crush, and her soul whom she should obey. So she fell in great pain. Pro-bearer. It came out. She screamed in despair. And that's when Donna, least you noticed that the bag around your waist had been stolen. But what's up happening? Said Diana, appalled. She failed all her missions so far. It wasn't your lucky day. But at least she said she was going to kill the princess, and took advantage of that everyone was distracted by looking at Evelis, and grew your yellow aura. It was an aura of air friction, for Diana was the bearer of the most coolest skill, the acceleration, the fastest in the world, and ran into the rock with the tip of his spear. Morgabum. Your attack was perfectly blocked. Crash came right on time. Diana said irritated, how can mere poison do this? She thought, Crash was another one of the corpses that Veles invoked with necromancy. He just said, that thought begs. Yours never changes, married Diana. Diana was very intrigued. You know me, she asked Chiffon. The Chubby then seized the moment, and sent you to learn. The blacks then came and stopped her. There was nothing else to happen. It was an attempt full of witnesses. And she couldn't do anything else. This just took her away. Cinder went to his savior to thank. Crash was with his hands. Defend that attack was heavy bar. He almost didn't make it. But anyway, most important was the safety of the little princess, and back there, Chiffon gave the orders to his team. Find all the traitors in your court. But Crush didn't even want to know how to expect. He just took the Evelis, and it was fading, with her, while saying, Sidley watches your back. Open your eye wide, care for relatives. And they just saw the Crash disappear with its magic. And the little princess didn't even have a chance to thank him. Right, far from there, inside the carriage, Crash and Evelis teleported back. As retribution for having saved your life, Evelis gives you the golden grass. She says she's had a bad time. To get the item. In exchange, Crash gives you back your heart. She said, thank you, you are really different from the other invaders. Intrigued, Crash asked why she called him that. But she said she knew the truth. When he defended Diana's attack, at that time he had used the erosion power of the world. But anyway, not that it made much difference. She was heartbroken. And the problems hadn't stopped there. When finally the Crush was relaxing, Sapphire the Crow said something had happened to his fiancée. A white Linda. The Cree said she was in the mountains of the Kingdom of 100 Hearts, but members of the Killer Dog militia were there too, and it was said that she disappeared. Therefore, Crush ordered them to pry into the Kingdom of 100 Hearts. Evols was impressed that an invader who didn't even Crush had a bride. He said, I heard that the girl, without feelings lives under hearts, but who would be crazy to marry her right, but then Crash so decide. Finally revealed the truth. I am not from another dimension. My name is Crash Valheim, the youngest son of Valheim, and Bianca is my fiancée. He says this when he undoes the magic reveals. Who is so shocked that her heart falls out of her hand. Continues. She gives a scream. You were a Valheim of the royal family. All this time in the royal mountain range of Hunter Hearts, the second family of the royal family was mourning. His name was Janik Hunter Hearts. She said she could have prevented Bianca from having gone to those mountains if you said you had the white mushroom. Many who accompanied asked why they put themselves in danger. Jennifer said the mushroom had ended up on the market. So Bianca went alone to pick him up in the mountains. When she found out, went after her sister with a search party, and there were several of them. And let's go flashback. She found her sister and said she was going to deal with this situation. She didn't have to sacrifice herself for the Crush's misfortune. As Bianca said, sister, my fiance is not a fault, and said more. You didn't need to have come, Jenny. But Jenny faked it. It's none of your business. I do what I want. She also said she would take care of it for Bianca. Then again insisted that she come back. But there was a little problem in the family there. Jennifer believed that your mother had died because of Bianca when she gave birth. Deep down they didn't get along so well, and Bianca said she would look for the mushroom alone. This was the moment when the situation got out of hand, for the killer dog himself came to bring them a cloud, saying, I can also go, guy. When Jenny looked back, just saw the nefarious face, and the axe. Hello ladies, the killer said. Jennifer paralyzed with terror, when you saw that every member of your group were beheaded. There only said sending them to flee. But we know what happened to this poor devil. More, let's skip the bloodbath. Otherwise the video demonetizes instantly. What happened next was that the two sisters ran up the mountain. They hid, and the killer started a little game of Dead by Daylight. The poor. Where are you bunnies? He spoke as he sought them out. A little sad, Bianca said she promised Crush, who would take the mushroom to him. Denny, who more focused, said he had an idea. They had artifacts, and they could use them to walk through the snow without making noise. They could reach the fault in the ridge and delay the killer. Only he had managed the plan. They had already arrived at the cliff. They just didn't have that much to go. Bianca pointed to the place where they should jump. Jenny, who said, if we fail we go by Dre. And White said, and if we stay here the killer kills us. And speaking of the devil, he appeared next. The girls couldn't waste time and jump it. Did not give the killer to reach them in time. But when he looked over the edge, the two were hidden. At a lower support point, the killer then jumped after them and Jenny despaired. Bianca, cold with a falling blizzard, told the sister to trust her. She just threw herself with the killer on the cliff. Jennifer only used to look at his sister's scar as she plummeted into that abyss of ice. Back to the prison, she said, and that's what happened. It was the last thing I saw. The search party said that where she fell, there was a lot of accumulated snow, so most likely she was dead. It left the Janek destroyed. She blamed herself, said he could have given the mushrooms they had in the mansion. One of her assistants said Bianca could be fine. From his eyes came these red lines. That was because he was being controlled telepathically through the body. The Crush was being told of all this firsthand. Jennifer said pro assistant to stop talking, as it had been a week since the accident. What are the chances of Bianca being alive? The girl only knew how to read books and only had no chance of survival against the killer and want to know the worst or the best. Bianca survived jail, lying in the middle of the snow. She screams, Crash, I need to see you. But the poor thing woke up for days. She was surviving, just eating nuts, and with the heat of the mushroom's umbrella sun, for they radiated heat. After she fell off that cliff, the unfortunate one walked a lot and luckily found a place full of summaries mushrooms. Beautiful and warm place. It really is a very beautiful place, isn't it? She put a handful of the mushrooms in her hand and saw that the legends about him were what they said. The heat they radiated was conchigant. With the knowledge she had of survival manuals he had read, she made Joel and Ali proud, and proved to be a worthy. Only despite this, cold injuries, and hunger pushed his body to the brink. She was already at the end of her rope. There was an avalanche outside, and not only that, but the killer was still at large, and it looks like he had finally found her. Bianca then went out to pick some more nuts. She found some of them buried by squirrels, and when was harvested, the axe came your way. Narrowly managed to dodge the blow. That would be deadly, but was affected by the impact. The killer approached her, and lifted her by the shield. He then took her beautiful brooch, and said, this here will give me good money. The poor girl only wanted one thing, back to the Blue Hall, and to your fiance. But I was supposed to pass away. She could only say, Crush, I'll miss you. And boom, Crash came out just in time, as he had heard her call. Who the hell are you? The killer asked while the proto was holding Bianca. He said, you were amazing, Bianca. Now rest, and leave the rest with me. He put her on the ground, and asked the Raven to look after her. Sapphire said he couldn't help in this fight, just Crush was strong enough to deal with the killer. The fearless protest said the obvious. Leave me behind him. We see that Everest had teleported them just in time. It was going to be a tough and dubious fight. The auras of the two grew bigger and Crush said, I will be the winner. He shows Bianca's hair ornament, and says he messed with the wrong person. The killer wastes no time in attacking fast with your axe, but he does it with great difficulty, due to the killer's absurd speed. Compared to the killer, Crush was not at the power level, but the killer dodges, and gives him another onslaught. He says, let's see how much you can get by blocking me. So what he forced. So much that the Crash sword jumped out of his hands, but the proto was gone amidst his perception. And the killer wondered where the kid had gone. Crash popped up right there next to him with a swipe. Unsock, the strength was so much, who even fractured a rib of the killer. But that's all he got. Best saw that he would need something else strong if he wanted to overtake the opponent. So this time decided to use the powers of fire that he had stolen from his brother. Killer then, fed up with so much persistence, decided to use a visual ability, the bond of illusion. Soon the proto found himself inside a genjutsu, and with that the proto was exposed, paralyzed. A killer mercenary who said, the rescue team must be coming. Let's end this now. This illusion skill utilized the bearer's aura. That spread through sound, and with that confused the senses. Crash knew you're old. I would have been on the drag a long time ago, but only now he had the sixth sense. It made all the difference. The killer then approached, and wielded his axe. Then he lowered the firewood on the kid, but just to come across the crash, deviating again. The killer didn't like anything he saw, then unloaded your anger. I am going to make your brides buy, and make you swallow every piece, he said. Crash has not lost his posture, and much less gave into the provocation. He was still affected by the killer's skill, who then made something worse. Crash managed to dodge an axe with difficulty. What he was going to do now against a bunch of axes. So no talk. Killer threw her ghost axes. Go do what ho? What caused you? Crash could only defend, and pray not to make mistakes. And the others just watch, wondering if they should interfere. That would have its price, but sometimes, saw that he could not simply abandon the person who saved. That's why he said, I will fight. More sapphire. The crow gave him a cookie, and said, don't interfere with your idiot. He chose to fight alone and said that Crush had a special kind of strength, and the boy was reaching the limit. His sixth sense had saved him from death. But his aura was already reaching the critical point, so he kept defending the axes, but having to rely only on instincts. Then one of the axes that came to attack is executed by the killer. It was a perfect replacement. The time of his death could be now, but Crash had a lot of gas to give yet. No wonder he evolved his abilities. Your fire skill has risen even higher, and he agreed beyond bounds. I like to use your aura. Crash then used his physical strength as fuel and supplied his power. That aura was like an explosion, and Crash had only 3 seconds to use it before she disabled. Realizing the level of power, what he decides to be deadlier. He spews a supersonic scream, the ghost voice. Then the Crash attack fails, hitting his shoulder. The killer prepared his claws to rip Crash. But then there was only one thing left to do, and Crash decides to use your ability to translate skills. Only before he able to complete the movement, the killer ripped his arm off this moment. For pushing your body to the limit. It made his senses high to the maximum, and its perception reached new limits, giving him new power, feeling even more, and also use cure magic. Simply, the Prota uses this heavy magic with a blade, and attacks faster. The result, he breaks the killer in half. Continues Sapphire. If you ask what had happened, but it happened. Crush lost his arm, but didn't lose the fight. But ahead his arm of tears curses was fallen. Sapphire question, are you now? And Crush says, continues is a very strong term, and then passes out, next to the killer's torn body. Sapphire just said, let's go home, and Valusk made the will to take them away. With its teleportation magic, continuing with the narrative, it was Bianca, beautiful, already grown up, and of legal age. She was talking to Crush, saying he didn't have a drop of feeling for her. Crush said the way she was. If her emotions eventually surfaced, she would die as a shock that it would be to feel this anger that I wanted to master. She said, if I died, you wouldn't feel anything for me, right? Even though she is his fiancée. We are basically weird. What had happened is that her family head of the clan had gone mad and killed the whole clan. Bianca was the only one who survived, save for your sister Jenny. After that, the Crash family and the Valheims decided he had no more reason that he stays with her. Then the relationship between them was severed indefinitely. This meeting between them was arranged so that could say goodbye forever. Crush said, because it is, we would probably never see each other again. So he looked at her with black eyes and said, I warned you, come here. So without any pity, used your magic to paint curses. He sucked the curse of the cold Bianca doll. That was a good thing. You guys ask me, but they say she had no feelings. So when Crush removed her curse, Bianca began to feel all the feelings of one only time princess: anger, joy, hate, remorse, pleasure, anguish. So at that moment a monster was born. Bianca turned into a demon, the White Demon. 3 years later, in the mountains of, some members of a search team were there. It turns out that a push-in has been sent to the king of Hunter, Baby Hands. It was a kid who drove him crazy. That's why he had killed his whole family. The war had then begun from that. And everyone was fed up. But the front on the mountain, Crash was being hunted by this team. He fled, until it arrived at the ruins of an ancient fortress. He knocked on the doors and fell. Bianca, you are there. Please translate for me. The answer, my friends, was immediate, and Bianca annihilated all the pursuers with a heavy rain of ice crystals. She appeared to him with a sword, stuck in your chest and throat. He stopped her in the arms, wondering if the potion that poisoned the king had done that to her. But let's not forget that he was the one who turned her into an enemy when he removed the curse that suppressed her feelings. On the day of tragedy at your house, her sister told her she had never hated. She from the bottom of the heart, the only person she hated was herself, for having hated Bianca for. Then Bianca inside a box to take. When she returned, now feeling emotions, and saw tragedy in his home, it was there that she realized that Jeannick always loved her, and she mourned it. It moves me here, bro. Bianca also regretted never having felt feelings. Her life couldn't all have been different. And there with Crush taking care of her, she said it could have been different with him too. and he didn't know what to say. Not without reason. But it was all a personal flashback. And back to reality, Crush was even more childish. In a room, and all bandaged, Bianca arrived alone, and so did the Sapphire Raven. Crush asked, "They are in." But Crush spared no effort and scolded her. "Because you were that mountain alone. Went crazy." The little girl just said she wanted to give the mushroom to him. Crush just returned the brooch to her. And at the end of it all he think, because now she had all the ingredients to make the elixir. Then he smiled with joy. Bianca couldn't say the same, drowned by her curse of feeling nothing. She said, "This is unbearably frustrating." For within it, she wanted to feel it all with him laughing, cry, get angry, and even other things too. But couldn't. She took his hand and said, "I don't want your emotions to go away and become like mine. If you don't smile, I don't want to smile too." And Crush got a little smiley. Then she squeezed her hand even tighter and said, "Bring back my emotions. Steal my curse." It's now, guys, attention. The time was coming. Everything Crush wanted. The second lock of her heart had broken. Oh, Crush had become the most important person to her. He had the knife and cheese in his hand. It was just terrible, her curse, and it's over. Bianca would finally feel emotions. She was going to become a demon. But that's what Crush wanted. To get stronger. Or maybe not, because he just pulled her and gave him a loving hug. And finally Bianca felt her emotions. For the first time, her curse has been broken. But not by selfish power. And yes, for love. And the poor thing cried in her fiance's arms.